The cargo hauler Meridian's run shuddered as it docked with Dusthaven Station, the magnetic clamps groaning under the strain of another rough landing. Marcus Webb didn't bother with the automated docking protocols anymore after 3 years. Running supplies to this forgotten mining outpost, he could probably dock the ship with his eyes closed. Not that he'd want to. The view of Dusthaven against the russet clouds of the gas giant below was one of the few beautiful things about this route. Marcus ran his fingers through his sandy hair and exhaled slowly, watching the station's airlock cycle through their security checks. Dusthaven wasn't the worst place in the outer colonies, but it came close. A collection of aging modules bolted together around an old mining rig. The station housed maybe 2,000 souls miners, traders, drifters, and those with nowhere else to go. The kind of place where dreams came to die quietly, without anyone noticing. He checked his manifest. Food synthesizers, medical supplies, water filtration units, and a dozen crates of personal items for the station's residents. Nothing exciting. Nothing dangerous. Just another routine delivery in a routine life. The airlock hissed open, and Marcus guided his cargo float through the docking tube into Dusthaven's main concourse. The artificial gravity here was set slightly lower than Earth standard, giving his steps a bouncing quality he'd never quite gotten used to. The concourse smelled of recycled air and cooking oil, its walls decorated with faded advertisements for products that hadn't been available in years. "Marcus," a gravelly voice called out. Hollis Chun, the station coordinator, waved from his usual spot near the environmental controls. "Right on time as always." "Wouldn't want to disappoint," Marcus replied, maneuvering the cargo float toward the distribution center. "Everything on the manifest this week. Even got those water filters you requested." Hollis clapped him on the shoulder. "You're a lifesaver, literally. 2 more weeks and we'd have been drinking our own well, you know." Marcus chuckled, but his attention had already drifted to the small trading post across the concourse. Catherine's Imports, the sign read in both standard and Queller script. Through the window, he could see movement a flash of copper skin and dark violet hair. "Still got a soft spot for Catherine's girl, eh?" Hollis said, following his gaze with a knowing grin. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus said, but he felt heat creep up his neck. "Sure you don't. That's why you've been taking this route for 3 years, when most pilots transfer out after 6 months. Marcus didn't dignify that with a response. He helped Hollis process the cargo, scanning each crate and logging its contents. The work was mechanical, leaving his mind free to wander, which it inevitably did, back to the trading post and the young woman who worked there. Sienna. He'd learned her name on his second delivery run. She was Queller, one of the insectoid. Species from the outer rim, though you wouldn't know it from looking at her. The Queller came in dozens of variations, and Sienna's lineage was one of the more humanoid types bipedal, with delicate features and large, expressive eyes that shifted between amber and gold depending on the light. Her skin had a burnished copper tone, and her hair fell in waves of deep violet that seemed to shimmer when she moved. But it wasn't her appearance that had caught Marcus's attention. It was the way she carried herself with a quiet grace, a thoughtfulness that suggested depths most people on Dusthaven never bothered to explore. She was gentle with customers, patient with the belligerent miners, and she had a smile that made even this dreary station feel a little brighter. Not that Marcus had ever worked up the courage to do more than exchange pleasantries during his deliveries. "Crate for Catherine's," Hollis said, interrupting his thoughts. "Personal shipment. Want to take it over while I finish logging the rest?" Marcus tried not to look too eager as he accepted the small crate. It was light, probably containing fabrics or small trinkets, the kind of luxury items that station residents ordered to remind themselves of better places. The trading post was quiet when Marcus entered, the bell above the door chiming softly. Shelves lined the walls, packed with everything from tool parts to preserved foods to hand-woven textiles from a dozen different worlds. The air smelled faintly of spices and something sweet he couldn't identify. "Hello?" Marcus called out. "Delivery for Catherine. One moment." Sienna's voice came from the back room. A crash followed, then a muttered curse in Queller. Marcus smiled despite himself. He set the crate on the counter and waited, his eyes roaming the shop. A new display had been set up near the window shells and coral pieces arranged artfully around a holographic projection of an ocean world. The water glowed with an ethereal blue-green light, and strange, graceful creatures swam through the depths. "Sorry about that." Sienna emerged from the back, brushing dust off her work tunic. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Oh, Marcus. I didn't know you were back today." "Weekly run," he said, gesturing to the crate. "This came in with the shipment. Thank you." She moved to the counter, and Marcus caught the scent of something floral, some oil, or perfume unique to her species. "My father ordered new inventory 3 weeks ago. I was starting to think it got lost." As Sienna began opening the crate, something caught Marcus's eye. Tucked beneath a fold of fabric was a small leather-bound book. It must have gotten mixed. In with the shipment somehow a personal item that had fallen into the wrong container. "Wait," Marcus said as Sienna reached for it. "That's not," but she'd already pulled it out, frowning at the unfamiliar object. The book tumbled from her hands, falling open on the counter between them. Marcus's eyes fell on the page, and his breath caught. The writing was in Queller script, but a translation chip embedded in his optical implant automatically rendered it in standard. The handwriting was elegant, flowing and unmistakably personal. Day 847 on dust. Haven. Another ship came through today carrying tourists bound for Luminara Prime. I watched them through the window, their faces bright with anticipation, and I felt that familiar ache in my chest. They're going to see the glowing oceans. They're going to walk on beaches where the sand sparkles like crushed diamonds. They're going to swim in water so clear and luminous you can see straight to the bottom, where bioluminescent creatures create gardens of living light. That's mine. Sienna snatched the journal away, her copper skin flushing a deeper bronze. Her eyes, usually so calm, blazed with embarrassment and something that might have been fear. "I'm sorry," Marcus stammered. "It was in the crate, I didn't mean to. It must have fallen in when I was packing up old inventory last week." She clutched the journal to her chest, her voice tight. "Please don't. I didn't mean for anyone to read that." Marcus held up his hands. "I only saw a few words, I swear." "About Luminara Prime?" Sienna's shoulders slumped, the fight going out of her. She glanced toward the back room, checking if her father was within earshot, then lowered her voice. "It's nothing. Just foolish dreams." "Dreams aren't foolish," Marcus said softly. She looked up at him, her amber eyes searching his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The shop seemed to hold its breath around them. "Luminara Prime is restricted," Sienna finally said. "Only wealthy tourists with special permits can visit. People like me. We're not even allowed to apply." Her laugh was bitter. "I'm not even sure why I write about it. Maybe it makes the dreams feel more real, even if they'll never come true." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition, perhaps, of a kindred spirit. How many times had he written his own impossible dreams in margins and notebooks? How many times had he stared at the stars and wondered what it would be like to matter, to do something that meant something? "I should finish unloading," he said, though every instinct told him to stay, to say something that would ease the sadness. In her expression, Sienna nodded, tucking the journal away beneath the counter. "Thank you for the delivery, and for not reading more." But Marcus had read more. As he turned to leave, his implant's memory buffer flashed the image of that page, preserving it perfectly in his mind's eye. He could see every word, every curve of her handwriting. Just once before I die, I want to see those glowing oceans. Just once, I want to feel what it's like to stand in a place of such beauty that it makes you forget everything else. Is that too much to ask from this universe? As Marcus walked back across the concourse, guiding his empty cargo float, a dangerous thought took root in his mind. Dangerous because once planted, he knew it would grow into something he couldn't ignore. What if dreams didn't have to stay impossible? What if someone could make them real? Marcus Webb had made the same delivery route 47 times since reading Sienna's journal. He knew because he'd counted every single run, each one another week that her words echoed in his mind. Just once before I die, I want to see those glowing oceans. He tried to forget, tried to convince himself it was none of his business, that he'd already invaded her privacy enough by reading those few sentences. But the memory of her face, that mixture of embarrassment and longing, had carved itself into his thoughts and refused to leave Dot, so he'd started bringing things. The first gift was small. A holocube displaying a three-dimensional recording of Luminara Prime's northern coast, where the waves crashed against crystalline cliffs in cascades of blue-green light. He'd found it at a tourist shop on Proxima Station and paid far too much for it. "I thought you might like this," he'd said awkwardly, setting it on the counter at Catherine's Imports. "For your collection." Sienna had stared at the cube, watching the miniature waves roll and glow. When she looked up at him, her amber eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Marcus, you didn't have to—" "I know," he'd interrupted quickly. "I just saw it and thought of you." That had been the beginning. Over the following weeks, the gifts continued. A bottle of sand from Luminara's Starlight Beach, each grain containing minerals that made it sparkle like diamond dust. A music crystal that played the recorded sounds of Luminara's tide pools, where water sang as it moved. A book of poetry, written by Luminara natives about their oceans, translated into Standard and Queller both. Each time, Sienna's gratitude was genuine, but tinged with confusion. "Why are you doing this?" She'd asked more than once, and each time Marcus had deflected. "Seemed like you'd appreciate it more than most people." What he couldn't tell her was that making her smile had become the best part of his week. That somewhere along the way, his need to see her happy had evolved into something deeper. Something that made his chest ache when he thought about her confined to this dying station, surrounded by reminders of a dream she'd never achieve. Today, Marcus guided the Meridian's run through Dusthaven's docking sequence with practiced ease, but his mind was elsewhere. Tucked in his jacket pocket was something different, a vial of water, authentic Luminaran ocean water, purchased through channels that had cost him half a month's salary. The station's concourse was busier than usual. A mining crew had just rotated out, and the bars were full of workers spending their earnings on watered-down alcohol and companionship. Marcus navigated through the crowd, his cargo float trailing behind, but he barely noticed the chaos around him. Catherine's Imports appeared quiet by comparison. Through the window, Marcus could see Sienna arranging merchandise on a shelf, her movements graceful despite the station's slightly lower gravity. She wore a deep blue tunic today, and her violet hair was pulled back in an intricate braid that exposed the elegant line of her neck. Marcus's heart did something complicated in his chest. When had she stopped being just a pretty face and become the face he most wanted to see? The bell chimed as he entered. Sienna turned, and her expression transformed into a smile that made the artificial lighting seem warmer. "Marcus, you're early this week." "Got a priority shipment for the mining operation," he explained, setting a small crate on the counter. "Figured I'd stop by first. My father's in the back doing inventory." Sienna moved to the crate, then paused, eyeing him suspiciously. "Please tell me you didn't buy something else ridiculously expensive. Would I do that?" Every single week for the last 3 months, yes. Marcus laughed, pulling the vial from his pocket. Okay, but this one is different. I promise. Sienna took the vial carefully, holding it up to the light. The water inside shimmered with that distinctive bioluminescent quality that made Luminara's oceans famous. Even in this small container, it seemed to glow with an inner light, tiny organisms creating sparks of blue and green that danced through the liquid. Marcus ... Her voice was barely a whisper. This is real Luminaran water, fresh from the source. Well, as fresh as you can get after a 3-week journey through shipping channels. She stared at the vial, transfixed. A single tear rolled down her copper cheek, catching the light. I can't accept this. Do you know how much this must have cost? Don't worry about that. Marcus, I can't let you keep spending your money on me. These gifts, they're beautiful, and I treasure every single one, but what? Sienna set the vial down carefully and met his eyes. Why? Why do you do this? We barely know each other. We've never even had a real conversation that lasted more than a few minutes. Yet every week you bring me pieces of a world I can never visit. I don't understand. Marcus felt his throat tighten. This was the moment he'd been avoiding, the conversation he wasn't sure he was ready for. But looking at her now, seeing the genuine confusion and wonder in her face, he couldn't keep deflecting. Because you deserve to have your dreams honored, he said quietly. Even if you can't reach them, someone should acknowledge that they matter. That you matter. Sienna's breath caught. The air between them seemed to shimmer with unspoken words. There's something I need to tell you, Marcus continued, his heart hammering. That day your journal fell out of the shipment. I read more than I said. Not much, just a few paragraphs, but enough to understand how much Luminara means to you. He expected anger, but Sienna just closed her eyes. I wondered. The timing of your gifts. It made sense. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have stopped bringing me things that remind me of what I can never have. She opened her eyes, but there was no accusation in them, only sadness. Maybe, but I'm not sure I would have wanted you to. Marcus stepped closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. Sienna, why is Luminara so important to you? Of all the worlds in the galaxy, why that one? She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the counter. When she spoke, her voice was soft with memory. When I was young, maybe 6 or 7 cycles old, a trader came through our settlement on Queller Prime. He had a portable holoprojector, and he was showing recordings of different worlds to attract customers. Most of the adults weren't interested. We were poor. Travel was impossible. But I stood there for hours, watching world after world appear and vanish. She smiled, lost in the past. Then he showed Luminara. The glowing oceans, the crystalline beaches, the way the water seemed alive with light. And I felt something break open inside me. It sounds foolish, but I knew in that moment that I was meant to see that place. That somehow my soul belonged there. It's not foolish, Marcus said, isn't it? I'm a Queller trader's daughter on a failing mining station. The closest I'll ever get to Luminara is these hollas and your gifts. The Galactic Authority restricts access to protected worlds, and even if they didn't, the travel costs alone would take 10 years of savings. 20, now that my father's in debt. Marcus's attention sharpened. Debt? What kind of debt? Sienna's expression darkened. Station authorities. He borrowed credits 3 years ago to expand the shop, thinking the mining operations would bring more business. But production has been declining, and the interest. She shook her head. They're threatening to seize our business license. Once that happens, we'll have no income. The station doesn't just let you stay if you can't contribute. What will you do? Leave, I suppose. tried to find work on one of the core worlds. Though without proper travel documents or skills training, she didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what happened to refugees without resources. Labor contracts, indentured servitude, worse. Marcus felt something crystallize inside him, a determination that had been building for 3 months, ever since he'd read those words in her journal. What if there was another option? Sienna looked at him warily. What do you mean? What if I told you I've been researching how to get to Luminara? That I've been saving credits and making contacts and figuring out the channels? Her eyes widened. Marcus, no. Whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking that some dreams deserve to come true. I'm thinking that you shouldn't have to spend your life trapped on dying stations, working yourself to exhaustion for people who don't appreciate you. I'm thinking, he stopped, took a breath. I'm thinking that I want to take you there, to Luminara. For real? Sienna stared at him like he'd lost his mind. That's impossible. The permits alone. There are ways around permits. Expensive, risky, but possible. You could lose your pilot's license. You could end up in a detention facility. Marcus, you can't throw your life away for someone you barely know. Who says I barely know you? Marcus countered. I've been coming here every week for 3 years. I've watched you handle angry customers with patience, help confused travelers with kindness, keep this shop running while your father drinks away his stress in the back room. I've seen how you light up when you talk about the ocean, how you collect these little pieces of beauty in a place that tries to crush anything beautiful. Maybe I don't know your favorite color or what you eat for breakfast, but I know the important things. I know who you are. Sienna's hand went to her mouth, tears flowing freely now. Why would you do this for me? Marcus reached across the counter and gently took her free hand. Her skin was warm, softer than he'd expected, with a faint texture that reminded him of fine silk. She didn't pull away, because when I read your journal, I saw myself. All those impossible dreams we write down in private, thinking no one will ever care. But I care, Sienna. I care about your dreams. And maybe? He hesitated, then pushed forward. Maybe I care about you. The shop fell silent, except for the soft hum of environmental systems. Sienna's amber eyes searched his face, looking for deception or pity and finding neither. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me try. Before Sienna could respond, a harsh voice cut through the moment. What's going on here? They both jumped, hands separating guiltily. Catherine stood in the doorway to the back room, his face flushed with alcohol and suspicion. He was older than Sienna, his copper skin dulled with age and stress, his once strong frame gone soft from years of sedentary work and drinking. Father, Sienna said quickly. Marcus was just delivering our shipment. Catherine's bloodshot eyes moved between them, noting the tears on his daughter's face, the guilty expressions. Looked like more than a delivery to me. Sir, I was just... Marcus began. I know what you are doing. I've seen how you look at her. Catherine moved behind the counter, positioning himself protectively near Sienna. We don't need charity from humans, and we don't need complications. My daughter has enough problems without some pilot filling her head with false hope. It's not false hope, Marcus said firmly. No? You going to solve our debt problem? Going to make the station authorities forget we owe them 50,000 credits? Catherine laughed bitterly. I didn't think so. So do your delivery and leave my daughter alone. Marcus wanted to argue, to tell Catherine that he was crushing his daughter's spirit with his cynicism. But Sienna caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. Not now. Not like this. I'll go, Marcus said quietly. He looked at Sienna one more time. Think about what I said. She nodded almost imperceptibly, her hand closing around the vial of Luminaran water dot as Marcus left the shop and returned to his cargo duties. His mind was already racing ahead. The debt changed things. It added urgency to what had been a vague plan. 50,000 credits was substantial, but not impossible. If he took higher-risk cargo runs, if he cashed in every favor and sold some assets ... and if he was going to do this, really commit to taking Sienna to Luminara, he needed to accelerate his timeline. He needed to contact Tobias Reed. The thought made his stomach clench with anxiety. Tobias was dangerous, connected to smugglers and document forgers and people who operated in the shadows. But he was also the only person Marcus knew who might actually be able to help. That night, after finishing his deliveries and securing his ship, Marcus sat in his cramped cabin aboard the Meridian's run and composed a message. Tobias, it's Marcus. Webb, I need your help with something. Something big. Contact me when you can. It's urgent. He stared at the message for a long time before sending it. Once it was gone, there would be no taking it back. He would be committed to a path that could end with him losing everything. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Sienna's face, the wonder when she looked at the water vial, the tears when he'd told her he cared. He saw the dream she'd written in her journal, the desperate longing for beauty in a life that offered so little. Some things were worth the risk. Some people were worth saving, even if it cost him everything. Marcus pressed send.